It expands, filling you up, and helps prevent the snacking that could ruin your diet.
That's filled me up nicely.
Kellogg's All-Bran fills the holes a diet creates.
Mountain-grown beads give Maxwell House its great mountain-grown taste.
More paste, thick, and chunky salsa. Here. This ain't paste, thick, and chunky salsa. Well, woo, doggies.
Paste is made with big chunks of tomatoes, onions, and peppers.
Perfect for dipping.
By folks in San Antonio.
You know what salsa should taste like.
Well, this stop's made in Welland Garden City.
Welland Garden City? Jake, it's time you switch brands.
Pace, the authentic salsa made in San Antonio.
Just talking about sensitive skin makes me go all blotchy. It may look fresh and smooth now, but if I can't use a normal moisturiser, what then? These days, I don't let it irritate me.
Oil of Ulay, hypoallergenic, pure white, clinically proven to care for even the most sensitive skin. It moisturizes deep down whilst avoiding irritation.
After all, young-looking skin doesn't grow on trees.
Oil of Ulay hypoallergenic twice a day, because Ulay is young-looking skin.
This summer, sail from Harwich into the heart of Germany for a motoring holiday from £172. For a brochure, phone 0800 300 900 now.
A major new Catherine Cookson season on Meridian. The horrors of the Western Front, the legacy of a brutal father, starring Lloyd Owen and Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Well, my dear husband, you're going to beg me to go to bed with you, aren't you?
A fight for the truth. And a duel with his own destiny.
A lot of blokes in the old days buying the commissions, but never one that paid for it with his wife's whoring.
The Cinder Path starts Sunday at 8.
Following the news at 10, we continue Jackie Collins's passionate tale, Lucky Chances.
From the headquarters of ITN, News at 10. With Trevor McDonald.
Wounded Briton evacuated as Serbs prepare to overrun Garadze. America warns the Serbs they face new air attacks. Inflation falls, but new taxes begin to bite. And John Curry, who took skating to new heights of artistry, has died. Good evening. The crisis in Bosnia deepened tonight with the key Muslim town of Garadze on the point of falling to Serb forces. A State Department official in Washington said a short time ago, the town's about to crumble. And within the last hour, the Serb commander has called on Garadze to surrender. For a time today, the UN appeared to have convinced the Serbs to halt their advance, to allow the evacuation of 2 wounded British soldiers. One was airlifted to Sarajevo, but by then the Serb forces had captured all the strategic points around Garadze. Our defense correspondent Jeffrey Archer reports from Bosnia.
Garazde and the villages around it have taken a pounding from Serb guns all this week, but this afternoon's assault on the town was of an altogether greater magnitude. UN observers in the Muslim town, including British SAS soldiers, warned that Garazde could soon fall to the Serbs, who want control of a major road that runs through it. Then came news that 2 of the SAS men had been seriously wounded by shrapnel. In the Bosnian Serb headquarters at Pale, talks between Serb leaders and the UN, searching for a ceasefire formula, were turned in their tracks. The UN demanded an immediate local ceasefire in Garazde to enable them to evacuate the injured soldiers.
At 6:30, Dr. Karadzic in Pale agreed to a cessation of hostilities to a ceasefire, together with Mr. Akashi.
At 20 to 9 local time tonight, the rescue helicopter landed in Sarajevo, bringing the men to safety. The Bosnian government suspected the evacuation meant an end to the UN presence in Garazde.
All I can say is that the UN will be responsible. If they do not take action, will be responsible for deaths of thousands of people.
The Serbs also struck a blow at NATO air power today. A French super-étendard reconnaissance jet was hit by Serb gunfire while taking pictures over Garazde. It managed to limp back to the French Navy carrier Clemenceau, but this was another sign of the UN's inability to stop the Serbs' aggression. The ceasefire in Sarajevo got shakier today too. A sniper fired into a tram, injuring several of the passengers. In Sarajevo's hospitals in the past few weeks, they'd hoped to see the end of scenes like these.
The UN has threatened new tough action against the Serbs, more bombing raids, if they don't stop their advance on Garazde. But with over 150 UN personnel still effectively held hostage by the Serbs tonight, the UN may find that it has little room to maneuver. Jeffrey Archer, News at 10 in Bosnia.
Tonight, the Americans made it clear that the Serb attack is being taken very seriously. If UN personnel come under further threats at the White House, they're prepared to sanction more airstrikes. This from our Washington correspondent, Bill Neely.
A day when Garazde teetered on the brink and Washington sent out mixed signals. A short time ago, this stern warning to the Serbs from the White House.
Clearly we're concerned about Garazde, and I think that the Bosnian Serbs should know that if they endanger the lives of UN personnel there, we stand ready to take the same action we took last week.
That means airstrikes, NATO planes attacking Serb targets. Earlier, the White House seemed determined to play down the sense of crisis. President Clinton meeting his top defense officials, telephoning Prime Minister Major and President Mitterrand, promising that the US will be firm but not provocative.
If the Serbs will consider what the reality is, they will see that they have a lot more gain from negotiations than from provocation.
With the Serbs closing in on Garazde, the Bosnian Vice President met the US Secretary of State. His message, don't wait, bomb the Serbs.
The Serbs should be unable to advance on Garazde. They should be disciplined to withdraw from Garazde. And the bombing is the effective way.
The US, believing a major peace agreement is within reach, was unwilling today to confront the Serb advance on Garazde.
May be a prelude to more vigorous military activity, or it may be a prelude to getting a better position at the negotiating table. We hope it's the latter.
The survival of Garazde and the prospects for peace appear poised on a knife edge tonight. US officials say Serb forces have now captured all strategic points in the town. Airstrikes stopped the Serbs once. Tonight, Mr. Clinton has a clear choice to make. Bill Neely, News at 10, Washington.
And we're going now live to Washington and to our correspondent, Bill Neely. Bill, what's the latest?
Well, a slight change. A few minutes ago, I spoke to a State Department official who said that all effective Bosnian resistance in Garazde has now collapsed. Not is collapsing, but has collapsed. The area, she said, has been largely overrun by Bosnian Serb forces. It's been a pincer movement by the Serbs from the southeast and by the north. I repeated the question and said, does that mean that the Garazde pocket has crumbled? And she said, absolutely. I asked what the next step was, if that meant NATO airstrikes, and she said that, of course, is the unanswerable question. At the same time, the diplomatic efforts to try to win a peace are continuing apace, but the situation has deteriorated fairly rapidly, even within the last few hours.
Bill Neely in Washington. Relatives and friends have been paying tribute tonight to the British officers killed when American jets shot down 2 helicopters over northern Iraq. They were Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Swan, a married man with 2 children, and 28-year-old Captain Harry Shapland, who was single and from Oxfordshire. ITN's Kevin Dunn reports.
In Washington, flags at half-mast, as an embarrassed administration sought to explain the tragic blunder over Iraq. The president making this promise to his allies.
We will move as quickly as possible to do a thorough and complete investigation, and then to put out all the facts.
The questions continued to come thick and fast, with Defense Secretary Perry having to admit the failure of every established procedure.
There are half a dozen procedures that we had in place, any one of which, if it had been working, could have prevented this accident.
Officials said the two F-15s made 2 passes over the helicopters and failed to recognize them. The pilots attempted no verbal warning and shot them down. And yet the entire operation was being monitored aboard an AWACS flying radar station.
To be quite frank, the more information that becomes known, the more incomprehensible the incident becomes, because clearly it was an operation which had been pre-planned.
At Chelsea Barracks, home of the Irish Guards, colleagues paid tribute to one of the British victims, Acting Major Harry Shapland.
A genuinely particularly talented person, and one whom we all loved as well, to be honest. He was the sort of officer whom the men enjoyed following, and that's magic.
The other British officer was Colonel Jonathan Swan, who was based at the Benbecula Artillery Range in Scotland. The investigation into how they came to die will take many weeks. The Pentagon said they would not rush to judgment, but would punish anyone found guilty of misconduct.
The rate of inflation fell last month, encouraging hopes of an interest rate cut, but increasing pressure for pay rises. The headline rate for March was 0.1% down on February's figure at 2.3%. The underlying rate, which doesn't include mortgages, fell 0.4% to 2.4%, the lowest since inflation measurements began 19 years ago. Here's John Draper.
The better inflation figures helped push up share prices. The FT index finished nearly 37 points up on the day, partly because of expectations of a cut in interest rates. But there were warnings that higher inflation is still in the pipeline because of tax and VAT increases.
Cost of living will be going up in the months ahead as people get their electricity bills through the front door, higher national insurance contributions, and of course higher mortgage costs. So cost of living will be going up in the months ahead, and these figures don't quite fully reflect that.
Chancellor Kenneth Clarke is pushing for an interest rate cut because he's worried that tax rises might curb growth. But official papers released this week show the Governor of the Bank of England, Eddie George, has resisted a cut because of fears that inflation might take off again. For shoppers, a fall in inflation will be welcome, but it doesn't mean prices are coming down. The cost of living is going up, but more slowly than before, so wages still have to go further. These postal workers today received their first wage packets since national insurance was increased.
About £3 or more worse off. So you do notice it straight away.
Well, about £5. The increases in our wages that we get, it's not going to compensate for the extra tax, extra national insurance or whatever, because we're not getting paid enough.
The inflation figures have given the government a respite, but the rise predicted for later in the year, added to higher taxes, have already led to calls for pay increases to compensate, and that's something the government will want to resist. John Draper, News at 10 in the city.
An Oxfam worker has given the disturbing account of terrible scenes in Rwanda before she managed to leave. Anne McIntosh says she still has no idea what happened to the Rwandan friends and colleagues she left behind in Jesinia, in the north of the country. She's been talking to our reporter, Andrew Simmons.
Only hours after returning from her horrific ordeal, Anne McIntosh was briefing aid workers at Oxfam's headquarters, detailing yet another atrocity in the bloodbath of Rwanda.
A very large mob of young men armed with clubs and machetes and traditional spears swept through the mission buildings, battering down doors, looking for the enemy. They found the family of a Tutsi nurse, a male nurse, and killed 7 members of that family in a matter of minutes, including a 3-year-old child, a little boy, whose head was split open with a machete blow, and a pregnant woman. And while that was happening, 2 little girls ran through the garden, having seen their family killed, begging us to hide them. And we did that. I do not know what's happened to those little girls now. All I know is that we saved them for a night.
Belgian troops managed to rescue Anne McIntosh. The UN has been given 24 hours to complete the evacuation of foreign nationals. Rebel forces have warned that after tonight, all foreign troops will be considered hostile. Today there were reports from Kigali that 1,200 Tutsi people, more than half of them children, were massacred inside a church. The UN is in a mounting dilemma. Belgian troops are pulling out, and there's still no decision on whether the UN withdraws entirely or sends in reinforcements. But its troops have no mandate to protect civilians from the relentless slaughter. Most aid work has been suspended because of the carnage, and Rwandan workers for Western aid agencies banned from leaving the country are themselves targets for the killers.
I feel very guilty at being safe here when I don't know what's happened to many of my staff. I don't know who of my friends are still alive. I don't know who of people we collaborated with, many committed and inspiring people. I don't know who of them is dead or alive. I don't know who I have to grieve for yet.
Oxfam's Anne McIntosh and the horrors of Rwanda. The skater John Curry, who brought the beauty of ballet to the ice and Olympic gold to Britain, has died of an AIDS-related illness. He was 44. Torval and Dean called him one of the greatest. Robin Cousins said John Curry had changed the world of figure skating forever. Sarah Montague looks back on a career of breathtaking artistry on the ice.
The 1976 Winter Olympics at Innsbruck and John Curry's finest moment. His unusual style, which for the first time combined the beauty of dance with the athleticism of the sport, won him a gold medal. He used his Olympic fame to launch a company to teach his particular style of skating, the style which revolutionized the sport.
I felt it was terribly important to provide an alternative for professional skaters other than the existing commercial ice shows. Having worked, 10 or 15 years, to then have to dress up as Bugs Bunny seems a bit of a waste of time to me. What skating really is about gliding, it's about movement, and it's about interpreting music. And if you have to forget all that, simply, to be able to do one spectacular jump which lasts less than a second, then I think it's a waste of time.
He was unique. That is often said about great artists, great actors, great sports people. And I think in this case it is absolutely true about John Curry. He was unique. There was only one John Curry, and there will only ever be one John Curry.
He only stopped skating about 3 years ago, but his style is still copied on ice rinks around the world.
Next on News at 10 tonight, what part for the princess at the D-Day commemorations? Brilliant on the ball, so why didn't Norwich City sign this young hopeful? And the boom in town rats, but what do the professionals use to get rid of them?
It's the Mark II rat basher.
What's Mark I?
The cricket bat.
Announcing the return of the Saab 900 Turbo. Call 0800 900 222.
Is that your Sarah? Yes. Those ankles, does she take after you?
Darling, I have to go. Come
I
on.
know.
Hello, James.
Oh, hello. Oh, darling, you haven't sent the package.